Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. Members, thank you for being here. It was well over a year ago that I had a meeting in my conference room with a group of women, and I walked in, and Senator Grassley, I looked at faces with expressions that I had never seen before, and I realized that it was something really serious. And in the course of that discussion, events were related. We did a bill, others joined, that bill has passed, and we have taken a giant step forward. Last week, in an extraordinary moment, broadcast for the whole world to see, U.S. Olympic gymnasts Aly Raisman, Jordan Weber, Jamie Dancher, along with 100 athletes, took the stage at the ESPY Awards to accept the Arthur Ashe Courage Award. It was an incredibly moving presentation. And I thought about that time in my office when these frightened faces were in front of me. And the survivors, many of whom are here today, radiate today remarkable grace, beauty, and strength. I wonder if they would stand so that we might recognize them in this hearing room. Thank you. These sister survivors took the stage after having endured hellish abuse over many years. This abuse was compounded by the toll it has taken on them to come forward, to tell their story, tell their truth, despite certain institutions' repeated attempts to silence them. Their solidarity and courage in coming forward, I marvel at it. I've worked with Chairman Grassley, Chairman Thune, Ranking Member Nelson, to protect future victims through the Protecting Victims from Sexual Abuse Act, and I so appreciate the support of my colleagues. But the fact is, revelations regarding institutional failures continue to force these victims from having to relive their experience over and over again. There must be a full and transparent accounting of what Michigan State University, the U.S. Olympic Committee, USA Gymnastics, and the FBI all knew and did about Dr. Larry Nasser while he continued to abuse young girls. Earlier this month, Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley, Senator Blumenthal, and I wrote a letter to the FBI Director, Chris Wray, requesting information about why, after the FBI received information about Dr. Nasser in July of 2015, the FBI failed to intervene while dozens of athletes continued to be treated and abused by Dr. Nasser. Similarly, despite reports that officials within Michigan State University, the U.S. Olympic Committee, and USA Gymnastics knew that Dr. Nasser was alleged to have abused athletes, he was allowed to continue to treat and molest young victims. Even after Dr. Nasser was finally arrested and prosecuted, hundreds of victims and their parents were never notified, contacted, or informed by these institutions about how they could obtain information about all that had happened to their children. To this day, many families of these survivors have yet to be contacted by officials at these institutions. Indeed, it appears that these institutions undertook massive public relations campaigns to preserve themselves, rather than rallying to the side of these survivors and their families. And let me say, that is unacceptable. Last year, when we worked on the Protecting Victims from Sexual Abuse Act, the overarching principle for me was the question of how can we best support and empower survivors. I believe each of the bill's supporters had the same intention. Tragically, it does not appear that Michigan State, the USOC, USA Gymnastics, or even the FBI adhered to the same guiding principle. Instead, there have been disturbing revelations of cover-up and trying to silence vulnerable victims. Some victims were pressured to sign non-disclosure statements to silence them from coming forward. I and other senators are looking closely at this issue. Ultimately, these institutions must all continue to re-examine their mission and focus, to truly serve as a beacon, to lift up the well-being of athletes, rather than to profit off them and protect the bottom line. Who can forget when Jessica Howard testified last year in our committee, Mr. Chairman, that USA Gymnastics officials stated its priority was, quote, money and medals, end quote, and not the well-being of young athletes in their care. As lawmakers, we must make sure, Mr. Chairman, that these institutions are held accountable. So again, I would like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Blumenthal, and particularly those members who have taken the time to be here today. And to the sister survivors here with us again, I want to say thank you to them.